If you have more than $8,000 in your bank account right now, you're richer than half of America. That's the median bank balance in this country. And if that number shocks you, wait until you see what comes next. I'm going to show you the real financial picture of America in 2026. And I guarantee at least 3 of these numbers will make you uncomfortable. But here's why you need to watch this. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you stand compared to everyone else. And more importantly, whether you're actually doing okay or if you need to make some serious changes right now. So here's what's happening. The economy looks amazing on paper. The stock market keeps hitting new records. Unemployment is sitting at historic lows. You turn on the news and they're talking about how strong everything is. But if you're watching this, there's a pretty good chance you feel like you're barely keeping your head above water financially. You're not going crazy. There's actual data that proves what you're feeling is real. So make sure to stay until the end, leave a like, and let's start with the most disturbing statistic. 67% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. That's 2 out of every 3 people. And before you think this is just people working minimum wage jobs, let me stop you right there. This includes lawyers, engineers, people pulling in 6-figure salaries. They're all trapped in the exact same cycle. They get their paycheck. Rent takes a massive chunk. Car payment disappears. Groceries somehow cost twice what they did 4 years ago. Insurance keeps climbing for no reason anyone can explain. And by the time the next payday rolls around, they're back at 0, sometimes negative. This isn't a problem with poor people anymore. This is a middle-class extinction event happening in slow motion. But it gets worse. 24% of Americans have absolutely 0 emergency savings, nothing set aside. No safety net, no cushion between them and total financial disaster. If their car breaks down tomorrow, if they get sick, if anything unexpected happens, they go into immediate crisis mode. And the reason isn't because they're irresponsible or bad with money. It's because after covering just the basic costs of staying alive, there's literally nothing left over to save. Meanwhile, 54% of households have 0 retirement savings. None. They're not planning for their future because they can barely afford to survive their present. Now let me talk about inflation, because you've probably heard that it's getting better. Technically, yes, the rate of price increases has slowed down. But here's what nobody tells you. The damage already happened. Prices right now are roughly 25% higher than they were in 2020. Everything costs a quarter more than it did just a few years ago. Your rent, your groceries, your insurance, your gas. Everything's 25% more expensive. And did your salary go up 25%? For most people, the answer is no. Maybe they got a 10% raise if they were lucky. The gap between what things cost and what people actually earn has turned into a massive canyon, and nobody's building a bridge across it. Here's another number that should concern you. 32% of Americans expect their finances to get worse this year. That's the highest level of financial pessimism we've seen since 2018. Think about what that means. Despite all the positive economic headlines, despite the stock market records, despite everything looking good on paper, 1 out of every 3 people is looking at 2026 and thinking they're about to get crushed. And they're probably right. See, we're living in what I call the split screen economy. If you own assets, if you bought a house before prices exploded, if you have money in the stock market, you probably had an amazing 2025. Your net worth went up. You feel pretty good. But if you're living off wages alone, if you're trading your time for a paycheck and trying to make that money stretch to cover everything, you're statistically falling further behind every single month. Americans were recently asked how much money they'd need to feel wealthy. The number they came up with was $2.5 million. Not enough to retire. Not enough to never work again. Just enough to feel wealthy. And the amount people say they need to retire comfortably has hit $1.26 million. Let that number sit with you for a second. The average person believes they need over $1 million saved just to stop working without constantly panicking about money. And as we're about to see, the actual retirement savings of most Americans isn't even close to that number, not even in the same universe. So where do you actually stand? Because here's something important you need to understand. Averages lie to you. When you hear that the average American at age 40 has $91,000 saved for retirement, that sounds pretty decent, right? But that number is completely distorted by the people at the very top. The guy with $2 million saved drags the average way up, making everyone else look better than they actually are. What you really want to know is the median. That's the exact middle point, where half the people are above and half are below. That's the real picture. Let me break this down by age, because this is where things get really uncomfortable for a lot of people. But before, know that only the 1% watching this will open their YouTube channel, since YouTube is the golden opportunity of this decade. Do you want to be one of them? Join my free community with the link below. Back to before. If you are under 25, the median retirement savings is about $2,800. Yeah, that's the real number. $2,800. For people aged 25 to 34, it jumps to around $15,000. Still nowhere near enough to actually retire on, obviously, but at least it's something. By the time you hit 35 to 44, the median is about $35,500. So if you're 40 years old and you've got 40,000 saved, you might look at that average of 91,000 and feel like you're way behind. But you're not. You're actually ahead of half the country. You're doing better than the median American. The 45 to 54 age group has a median of about 61,500 saved. People aged 55 to 64, the ones who can actually see retirement on the horizon, have a median of 87,500. And people 65 and older, who are either already retired or about to be, have around 88,500. Here's the brutal truth. 88,000 is not enough to retire on. If you follow the 4% withdrawal rule, that gives you $3,500 per year. That's $291 per month. You cannot live on that. Social Security helps, sure. The average check is about $1,900 a month. Add that to your retirement savings, and you're looking at maybe $2,200 a month total to live on. That's extremely tight. Really, really tight. Now we need to talk about debt, because savings only tell half the story. Debt is the anchor that's dragging everyone down, and it's distributed differently across generations in ways that might surprise you. Gen Z, the youngest adults aged 18 to 28, are carrying an average debt load of about $34,000. That sounds manageable until you realise most of it is student loans and car payments, and these people are just starting their careers. They're beginning their working lives already deep in the hole. Millennials aged 29 to 44 are carrying an average of $132,000 in debt. Mortgages are the biggest piece of that, but they've also got student loans that never seem to disappear, and credit cards constantly filling the gap between what they earn and what life actually costs. But the real debt champions are Gen X. People aged 45 to 60 are carrying an average of $158,000 in debt, the highest of any generation. They're getting squeezed from both directions. They're paying for their kids' college while also helping their aging parents financially, all while desperately trying to save for their own retirement that's rapidly approaching. They're trapped in the middle, and the numbers prove it. Baby boomers, aged 61 to 79, have an average debt of about $92,000, lower than Gen X, but still really significant, especially for people who should theoretically be winding down their financial obligations. Many of them are still paying off mortgages or helping family, members, and it's eating into whatever retirement cushion they manage to build. And then there's credit card debt. This is the trap that never stops taking from people. The average credit card balance for people who carry debt is nearly $7,000. But here's the number that should genuinely terrify you. 46% of credit card holders do not pay off their bill in full every month. Almost half the country is paying 20% interest or more on their balances. That's not debt anymore. That's basically a tax on being broke. If you're carrying a $7,000 balance at 22% interest and you're only making minimum payments, you'll be paying that off for years and years while the bank collects thousands in interest. The system is literally designed to keep you stuck in that cycle. So how do you compare to all of this? Are you ahead of the median or behind? Are you part of that 67% living paycheck to paycheck, or have you somehow managed to carve out some breathing room? The answer actually matters, because understanding where you stand is the first real step to changing your situation. Let's dig into what people are actually doing with their money right now, because the behavior patterns reveal something really important. It's not just about how much you have, it's about the choices people are being forced to make under massive financial pressure, and those choices are creating a cascade effect that makes everything worse. First, the savings rate. Americans are currently saving about 3.5% of their income. That's pathetically low. The historical average is closer to 8 or 9%. Financial experts recommend at least 20% if you actually want to build wealth. But 3.5% means that for every $100 you earn, you're keeping $3.50. Everything else evaporates into expenses, debt payments, and the black hole of daily living costs. This isn't people being lazy. This is people getting absolutely crushed by the math of modern life. Why is the savings rate so low? Because people are making a horrible choice every single day. Save for the future or survive the present. And survival keeps winning. When your rent jumped 30% over 3 years, when groceries cost 25% more than they did in 2020, when your car insurance somehow doubled for reasons nobody can explain, you don't have spare cash to put away. You're not building wealth, you're just plugging holes to stay afloat. Housing's where this squeeze becomes really visible. If you're a renter, the statistics are brutal. Nearly 50% of renters reported difficulty paying their monthly rent in 2025. Not that it's tight. Actual difficulty. The kind where you're choosing between paying rent and buying other necessities. The median rent in America hit about $2,000 a month. If you're making the median household income of around $75,000, that rent is consuming 32% of your gross income, before taxes. Financial advisors say you shouldn't spend more than 30% on housing. Most renters are already over that line before they pay for literally anything else. Homeowners aren't living in paradise either. If you bought a house in the last 3 years, you're probably locked into a mortgage rate between 6 and 8%. That's double what people were paying in 2020. A $400,000 mortgage at 7% cost you about $2,660 a month, just in principal and interest. Add property taxes, insurance, and basic maintenance, and you're looking at $3,500 to $4,000 monthly. For a household making $100,000 a year, that's half your take-home pay going to just one asset. But here's the really twisted part. If you already own a home, especially one you bought before 2020, your net worth probably looks fantastic on paper. Home values shot up, the stock market hit records, your retirement account statement makes you feel rich. But you can't eat equity. You can't pay your electric bill with unrealized stock gains. So you've got this weird situation where someone's net worth increased by $200,000, but they still feel completely broke because their monthly costs are strangling them. This is exactly what I mean by the split-screen economy. Turn on any financial news channel and you'll see headlines about the S&P 500 breaking records, unemployment staying low, GDP growth looking solid. Everything seems fine, but talk to actual human beings and they'll tell you they're drowning. Both things are true at the exact same time. The economy is doing great, the people are not. Credit cards are filling the gap between income and expenses, and it's turning into an absolute disaster. Remember that $7,000 average balance? Let's actually run the math on what that cost you over time. If you're paying 22% interest, which is pretty standard now, and you're only making minimum payments of about $140 a month, it'll take you 94 months to pay that off. That's almost 8 years. And over that time, you'll pay over $6,000 just in interest alone. You'll end up paying nearly double what you originally borrowed. The credit card companies know this. They're counting on it. That's literally their entire business model. They make billions off people who are too broke to pay off their balances but desperate enough to keep charging things. And it gets worse because the psychology of credit cards is absolutely vicious. When you're stressed about money, when you're exhausted from working long hours or multiple jobs, when you're just trying to keep your kids in decent shoes and your car running, you stop carefully tracking every single purchase. You swipe the card and tell yourself you'll deal with it later. Later becomes next month. Next month becomes next year. Suddenly you're one of the 46% carrying a balance and paying interest on pizza you ate 6 months ago. That's absurd. And think that you can fix that by opening a YouTube channel, even if you start from zero. Join my community below to understand how to do it. Debt is also preventing people from making smart financial moves. Let's say you're carrying $132,000 in debt like the average millennial. A huge chunk of that is probably your mortgage, which is actually fine. That's leverage on an asset that should appreciate over time. But you've also got $30,000 in student loans at 6% interest, a car payment of $500 a month at 9%, and maybe $8,000 on credit cards at 20%. Your minimum debt payments alone are probably around $2,500 a month. That's $30,000 a year going out the door just to service debt, not to build wealth, not to invest in your future, just to not fall further behind than you already are. This is why people can't save. This is why emergency funds don't exist for most households. Every dollar that could possibly go toward building a financial cushion is already allocated. It's spoken for before you even see it. It goes to debt payments, inflated living costs, and the constantly increasing price of just existing. You're not falling behind because you're irresponsible with money. You're falling behind because the system is extracting more from you than it used to, and your income hasn't kept pace with that extraction. The numbers prove it. When you adjust for inflation, wages have barely moved in 20 years for most workers. But costs have exploded. Healthcare, education, housing, childcare. The big unavoidable expenses that you can't just cut out of your budget. Those have all outpaced wage growth by absolutely massive margins. So even if you're making more money in raw dollars than your parents made at your age, you're actually poorer, in real terms, because your purchasing power has been completely shredded. This is why so many people feel gaslit when they hear about how strong the economy is. If you're a homeowner who bought before 2020 and you've got money invested in the stock market, yeah, you probably had a great year. Your net worth went up on paper. But if you're a renter trying to break into home ownership, Or if you're living off wages without significant investments, the economy isn't working for you. It's actively working against you. This is the tale of two economies playing out in real time, and most people are on the wrong side of it. The wealth gap isn't just widening, it's becoming a chasm that's almost impossible to cross. The people who own assets, who bought homes before prices went insane, who have retirement accounts invested in the market, those people are doing fine. Better than fine, actually. Their net worth grew significantly in 2025. But if you don't own assets, if you're starting from zero trying to get your first foothold, you're running uphill into a hurricane. The starting line keeps moving further and further away from you. Here's what really bothers me about all of this. Those benchmark numbers we talked about earlier, those medians for retirement savings, those debt averages, those aren't aspirational goals. Those are just survival metrics. And half the country isn't even hitting them. If you're 45 years old with $50,000 saved for retirement, you're ahead of the median. You're doing better than half of all Americans your age, but you're still nowhere close to where you actually need to be to retire comfortably. That $1.26 million number that people say they need. At the median savings rate, most people will never even get close to it. Not even in the same ballpark. The system isn't designed for regular people to win anymore. It's designed to extract value from you. Credit card companies profit when you can't pay, off your balance. Landlords profit when housing costs consume 40% of your income. Employers profit when wage growth stays flat, while productivity keeps soaring. You're not failing. You're being failed by a structure that prioritizes profit extraction over financial stability for working people. But here's what you can actually control. You can't fix the economy. You can't lower interest rates or make rent affordable across the country. But you can stop measuring yourself against averages that are inflated by extreme outliers. You can stop feeling behind just because some chart says you should have more. If you have anything saved at all, you're already ahead of 24% of Americans who have literally nothing. If you're making progress on your debt, even if it's slow progress, you're moving in the right direction, while others are standing still or going backwards. The economic landscape is harsh and unforgiving. But you are not powerless. Focus on the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap, even if it's tiny right now, is your margin. That's your weapon. That gap is what eventually becomes your emergency fund, your down payment, your escape route from paycheck to paycheck living. It won't happen overnight. It might take years. But the alternative is staying trapped in this cycle forever. And that's not an option you should accept. The numbers don't lie. They paint a pretty dark picture of where most Americans stand financially in 2026. But the numbers also don't tell you what to do next. If you're sitting here realizing you're behind the median, or way behind where you thought you'd be, don't spiral into panic. Don't shut down. The averages are broken. The system is designed to extract from you. But you're not powerless in this situation. Start small. Track that gap between income and expenses. Build your margin even if it's just $20 a month at first. Stop comparing yourself to people whose wealth came from perfect timing and luck you didn't have access to. You're not in a race against them. You're in a fight for your own financial stability, and that fight is absolutely worth winning. Oh, anyway, I opened a new completely free community where I explain how to create and scale your YouTube channel. After an experience with over 10 successful channels, there I will give you all my strategies and tips to monetize and scale your faceless YouTube channel, and I will help you step by step. Since YouTube is the golden opportunity of 2026 if done well, I'm waiting for you. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only, and any results depend on your own decisions and actions.